Today's episode is sponsored by Enigma, issue number 4, and my poetry book, Parts of Man, The Declaration of Truth. Today I want to talk about two different topics. The first topic is there is no difference between a rich person and a poor person. From society's idea of a rich and poor person. The world society determines wealth based on how much economic uh, leverage you have, access you have, how much power you have when it comes to money. And money is usually controlled by governments, central banks. And these governments determine who gets the money, who don't get the money. And usually these governments exist because they conquered a people and took their money. Like the Western expansion, European expansion to the Americas was driven by their lust and desire for the gold, the resources, the food from America. They took the wealth from the original American people and redistributed it to white people, Europeans. And now these Europeans inherited this stolen wealth and are considered rich. And then many times these Europeans squandered the money. Great Depressions, wars, and the government reset and redistributed the money right back to these Europeans. Like Frankenstein, keeping these monsters alive. But your access to material acquisition outside of your body is not real riches and wealth, because you cannot take any of it with you, and it's not really connected to you. It's not really something that you can really utilize, that a poor person can't utilize, because there's only a certain amount of air that you can breathe at one time. You take one breath at a time. It's only so many beats that your heart can beat a minute. Heartbeats per minute. So much blood that can be circulated per day. It's only so many minutes and seconds that you have to exist per day outside of your sleep. There's only so much sunlight that each person in the world gets per day. And a rich person doesn't have more access to the sun than a poor person. They don't have more access to the sea, to the air, than a poor person. But they put up these artificial boundaries and barriers to prevent access to these resources in many occasions, and that give the delusion that these rich people somehow have some type of divine position. But really it's an artificial barrier. And they usually have the people at gunpoint and with the fear and a threat of danger. They call that being under duress or being under coercion. This is how they exercise wealth and power. But usually it's all delusional. Each human being on average, because you have some people that has imparities, some people are handicapped, but the average human being have arms, legs, a brain. They have everything they need to maneuver on top of the earth. They have lungs to breathe the air, nose, eyes to see, the five senses. Without the five senses, you're just basically just seeing nothing, just blank, no sound. You're dead. You're just in a state of just darkness. And it's going to be part of my next topic, the darkness. But whatever a person perceives in reality is reality. Like King Solomon say, as a man thinking in his heart, so is he. So if you actually was told that you are poor, even though you're not poor, because there's no such thing as being poor, then you would actually condition yourself and put yourself in that position of poverty, because it's really a relationship, the poor and the rich. The rich is determined by the poor, and the poor is determined by the rich. It's a power dynamic that you agree to, and you agree to trade with this currency that this government created, this fiat currency that gives them the so-called wealth that they have. Elon Musk, $200 billion. It's not even possible for one person to have access to that much money. That's how much money governments have. But this government, the United States, has allowed one person to accumulate that much wealth, so-called wealth, that he can't even use. With that type of money, the only thing that can be done with it is to be circulated amongst a nation of people, not to be withheld. It's almost like you have a farm of crops. You have like acres and acres, hundreds of acres of corn, tomatoes, peas, potatoes, right? You got cows, chickens, turkeys, pigs. You have this massive farm, but you're gonna just think you're gonna just eat all of this food for you by yourself. This is what the Elon Musk is doing. It's not possible for one person to eat an entire farm worth of food. The only thing you could do with this food is to distribute it to the people in the nation, in the community. And this is how you trade with these people. This is how you get the money, because you traded with these people. Or the people might have a right to this stuff because it grows, because the sun allowed it to grow. You wasn't the one who invented chickens. You didn't invent potatoes. You inherited it, or you came and stole it from the original citizens, and now you're hoarding it. The United States even pay farmers not to farm, to destroy their crops, and they use corn. They use corn to create ethanol, gasoline for cars, instead of giving this to people to eat. And it's create this so-called scarcity of food, and it's create this so-called poverty gap, because the money is being given and distributed to these select white people. And the world view today, 2022, for the past 400 years, I should say, is white people are rich. They are the dominant people. And it's a better chance, an easier chance that a white person have access to money and resources than a non-white person. And the world agreed to this philosophy. And the United States government actually enforced laws and policies to give the white people the wealth of the indigenous American people in both the Middle, South, and North America. The Homestead Act, the Indian Removal Act, the Trail of Death, when they just kicked all the Indians out of Chicago, the black Indians, and gave the houses to white people. The Homestead Act, they gave so-called abandoned Indian land to the first Caucasian who squatted on their land, in their houses. But true wealth, true riches, because if you look at the world itself, you have the land, you have the ground, the sea, and the air. You have mammals, fish, birds, stuff like the insects, reptiles. They all have something in common. They have a vessel. And this vessel that they have has a certain function. Either they fly, they swim, they crawl, they slither, talk. The human being has the hand. I ain't gonna share this wisdom though. But the human being has the ability to imagine and create and manifest whatever they imagine with the hand. And they have certain different characteristics per human being. People with so-called darker skin, melanin, they could be able to sustain the climates, the sun, the harsh weather. They have more sweat glands. They have more. This is why they call us more, because we just have more, And this ability, this capacity has allowed the so-called black people to acquire things, wealth, farm, streamed weathers, to imagine, create, and design cities, irrigation systems, river systems. And this would actually made us rich because of our mind and our physical capacity, our ingenuity and our strength. It wasn't just the government just somehow conquered a country and just gave us all the money. We usually were the people who was conquered and robbed of everything, and then you go set up somewhere else, and then use your mind, your intellect to create ingenuity, ideas, inventions, and then that creates a demand, and then you become rich again. Then the same government that robbed your ancestors come and rob you, and then give the resources to the so-called white people, and you make it seem like they're just rich. But to have access to life itself, because King Solomon said in the book of Proverbs, and a live dog is better than a dead lion. Life is wealth. To be alive, because when you're alive, you have access to the same climate, city, regardless if you poor or not. If you living on a park bench, you still get the same summer that the so-called rich people get. They might have the ability to take baths, even though a lot of them don't take baths, but they have, like, they could live in a skyscraper. You could live in a shack, but you still have the same sunlight, the same temperature, the same climate that they have, be it cold or hot. There's really nothing separating it. And then there's only a certain amount of calories that you can consume per day. We are really rationed. It's only so much air you could breathe at per second, so much food you can eat per day. Otherwise, you would die over consumption. You would get poisoned. But there's no real difference between poor and rich people when it comes to the world view of riches, which is access to this money that's being distributed and printed by these governments. The next topic I want to talk about is the need to really, it's not really a need, but it should be a desire to be more giving and to be more helpful. We look at these two lights in the sky, the great light and the lesser light. One light gives light, the sun. The other light seems to be taking, it's taking light, and when it's taking light, the world is dark. That's letting you know the takers are the wicked, because when they take, everything else suffers. The givers are the righteous, because when they give, the world shines. So I think it's better, or the purpose of life itself is to either give or take. Some people are like white people, I should say. White people usually just take and take and take, destroy without really recirculating or being reciprocal. The pale-skinned people, they feel that there's nothing on this earth other than to indulge and to get as much as you can before you die. They don't really circulate and contribute anything to help people. But the so-called American Negro seems to be a people who is more giving, more interested in seeing justice, because that's really what justice really is. Everything is balanced. The poor person needs food to eat. The ignorant person needs education. The man needs a job or access to resources to take care of the family. The women needs protection. The community needs protection from crime and destruction. It's not just how the Caucasians did in America. They make laws to destroy and annihilate the dignity and the persons of the Negro. And this would have continued if it wasn't for Dr. Martin Luther King. And there was never a so-called white savior who did anything to just jump up out of nowhere to help the Negro, other than Abraham Lincoln and so-called John Brown, allegedly, you know, and these laws that was passed caused us economic and psychological trauma imposed on us by this so-called government who gives all of the resources to so-called white people. But yeah, I think you should be more willing to help those who need help as opposed to not helping those who need help. Because when you don't help those who need help, you're wicked. You cause reality to be in darkness. That's what the moon is. But it's somebody got to fill in that role. It's an endless cycle. Like the Egyptians say, that's Set, the darkness, the wicked one, the evil one. And you got Horus, the light bringer, the savior. But that's about it.